And we are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of amazing food safety, food quality, all kinds of amazing, awesome stuff, which tastes and has the best flavor of anything out there. And a lot of times the work that we do in food safety and quality assurance, nobody notices, because if we're doing a good job, guess what? Nobody cares. But guess what? Allie and I, we care. And we're here to say thank you very much for all that you did this week. If you're new to the chat, welcome. Pull up a chair. My name is Brian Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and every Friday on YouTube and LinkedIn, we live stream, and I get to bring on an amazing expert, and we talk about all things food safety. And one thing that you'll notice on the chat is that this is not a lecture. This is not us dictating to you what needs to be said and done. Nope, this is a conversation, and what makes it so much fun is that interaction. And Allie always does an amazing job when she's in the chat, commenting and helping out. So thank you for that. So of course, my guest here for the chat here today is Alexis Kennedy, who works for an undisclosed major flavor house somewhere in the United States. Allie, how are you doing today?
I am doing really good, Brian, and super happy to be here.
Awesome. So where in the world are you at today?
I'm in North Carolina, and it is beautiful and sunny for the next couple days in the 60s, surprisingly, before we get a nice thunderstorm.
Yeah, so last week with Joe Lano, he said they've been getting tons of weather. So he's kind of on the North Carolina, South Carolina border in that area right there.
Yeah.
Anna's here. Yep. Good morning, team. Absolutely. Hello, Anna, Paula, Craig. Good to see you. Of course, I am in Loveland, Colorado, where it's been a little warm here, Allie. It's today it's going to be 80, and then we're getting our rain. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, supposed to rain, which is great. Help, the flowers all bloom. Everything here is starting to kind of come into its own. So beautiful time of year here in Colorado. So everybody else in the chat here, do like Anna did here. Say hi. Let us know where in the world you're at, because I'm always amazed. We get people from Egypt and Africa. A lot of times we have people from Nigeria, on India, which always amazes me, because I mean it's late. It's pretty much 12 hours opposite over there. So it's always really nice that they're able to join us. Good to see Elena's here. Good. Elena's been very busy on LinkedIn with all kinds of fun activities. So keep it up. Keep it up, Elena. We like watching you. So yeah, one of the things that I always want to jump through, Alexis, on the chat is skipping over the drink. So everybody, please join us for a drink of your ceremonial beverage. Pretty cup. I like that. Cheers. Now, speaking of busy people on LinkedIn, Bana has been very busy. She's been posting a lot of really, really good content out there on what she's seen and what she does around food safety and quality. So make sure, if you're not connected with her, definitely check it out. She's putting out some really nice content. And Twin Falls, not a bad place to live either. Nice area up there. So for the dad joke today, Allie, actually today's a bit of trivia. It was very interesting, this trivia. I didn't know this. This was really surprising. But of course, everybody knows about Albert Einstein, right? An absolute genius. Absolute. But a lot of times, families, you don't know a whole lot about their family. So I was doing some research on this, and I found out that his brother Frank, absolute monster.
How I feel about your dad jokes.
Awesome. Oh.
I just let them wash over me.
They're like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. He's making me. He also didn't like fire very much.
Oh my gosh, you're just keeping them going.
Oh
man, I missed this part.
So a little background for everybody. So Anna had referenced this earlier as well. So Allie and I worked together for almost 3 years, working in quality assurance and all kinds of regulatory and fun activities. And then as things go in the business world, we kind of had to go our separate ways, and we kept in contact, which, number one, is an important lesson in what we do, right? Is never burn bridges. The relationships you build in this field, super important, because number one, it's not a point of competition. We're all working together for these things in the same area. So
Hmm.
if it doesn't matter if you're working for a flavor company or an ice cream company or whatever, we're all interlocked and we're all here to protect food safety. So when you do that, it's very important to share information. And if you pull out just a little bit of a tidbit from a new piece of information going to a show or listening to this live stream or other good content that's out there, incorporate that because that's how you grow. It's always incremental. And so part of that, let's give everybody a little background on what you're doing now. What's your new role and what have you been up to?
Yeah, so I've jumped from being in quality and I'm in regulatory, but my quality work definitely was overlapping regulatory. So it was this open door for me that I jumped in and I was so excited that it was offered to me. And when you say networking and having good relationships is key and paramount to everything you want to do. It was how I was able to get this position. I had, I guess, a good reputation with someone. They heard about the layoffs, and they were really amazing and said, "Hey, would you like to join my team?" And then I got to meet the team, and we synced up so well. And I was like, "Oh, I really hope this works out." And here I am, and I've been there for a month, and so happy.
Yep, absolutely. And it's the more you work in this field and the farther your career advances, the more important those relationships become, especially at the senior level, vice president, things like this. Is you may be looking at a particular role, and what happens behind the scenes is phone calls, right? Everybody knows everybody, and your reputation follows you. So you have to protect and guard your reputation and build it up because it's extremely important. The other good piece that you mentioned in there as well, Allie, is what Scott Adams calls the talent stack. So you've developed a skill set in a variety of different areas. You're good at quality assurance, and you'd mentioned regulatory. You didn't even mention your R&D background. You know a ton about R&D. So going into a company, you have many different activities that you can do to help them. And that's super important to be able to contribute in different ways.
Correct. It definitely did.
And it helps you see the big picture, right? Because you're not siloed into I'm regulatory and all I care about is regulatory and labeling and let everybody else worry about everything else. No. We're all working together as a team to put together a product that people love and doesn't kill them and that we can make money so that we all have jobs, right?
I would agree. And I think it also helps if you are in a very technical space. Understanding other departments allows you to empathize with them. You
Mhm.
know their pain points and the stress that they go through, and I think that has allowed me to excel at what I do because I'm like, I remember when we would do like a batching of like all of these products that we were wanting to launch with, and you have these quick deadlines and you're trying to make your customers happy, and then understanding the pain points of regulatory. It's like we have to go slow, so how do we find that happy medium? And I think if you are able to just go in and see like what procurement does, you can understand them, and I think it allows you to build stronger relationships.
Yeah, and this interweaves with what Joe and I were talking about last week. We took different controversial issues in food safety and we presented both sides of the coin. Here's a pro side for the issue and here's a con against that. Every issue has two sides. So it's very important to be able to put on those other hats and see it from your perspective. And that's why your R&D background, for example, is so important. Because when you're batching products, you can look at it not just from is this functioning correctly? Does this have the right mouth feel? Is the flavor correct? Is the color correct? All the things that R&D is looking at. You also need to think, is it safe? Is this something we can actually make? Because if
Hmm.
you can't, you're wasting time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so with that, one of the things, and this is a perfect opportunity, and this is something else I want to emphasize here in the chat too, because a lot of times people are like, well, Brian, you're spending an awful lot of time on all this people stuff. Let's just talk about the technical stuff. No, these two things are equally important. You can be the best, smartest, brightest QA food safety guy in the world, but if you can't talk and communicate to people and persuade them and teach them why these things are important for them, you're not going to succeed. And so with that, and this is the perfect opportunity with you in your new role and some of the successes that you've had so far, this is a perfect opportunity to show everybody else how to do this in your role, because setting up that first period of time is going to determine the rest of your time at that company, because human beings by nature make decisions very quickly, right?
Mhm.
What's those things, right? You decide very quickly about someone within the first few seconds when you meet them. Is this person competent? Is this person, all these different type of things that go back to our caveman days, where we have to figure out, right, friend or foe, threat or not,
Mhm.
right? And these things are hardwired into us. And
Yes.
that period of time, your impression, your reputation, your ability to get things done in that company are really being set up in that first 90 days.
That is absolutely true. And also, even with your interview, how you speak to people in your interviews is very key. I think when you said, how you work, I didn't realize because I had met with my now CEO. I did interview with her, and we talked about a lot of things. And you don't know what sticks in your interviews, and I got to have lunch with her, and she brought up one thing that she said she was really excited about me is because I brought up an instant that I used to work at. My first job was at In and Out, and In and
Mhm.
Out is all about customer service, but they also train you. It's great when you're young because you're malleable to get excited that you have a line out the door and your drive is packed with cars. You don't get stressed, you get excited and you start singing and it becomes a full team effort. And I told her, I said, I've never left that mentality. I've always been, when things are hitting the fan, which always happens in the food industry, it's okay. We'll get through this and let's just get excited and put our thinking hats on and how we can accomplish the goal to close it out.
Right.
And that's what stuck in her head about our conversation. And I was like, wow, it's something from many years ago that I did and brought the story up now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point, especially in food safety. If there's a crisis in the company, if you're the head of quality or you're working in quality assurance, everybody's looking to you. And if you're panicking with your hair on fire and you don't know what to do, that's going to set the tone and everybody's going to freak out. But if it's like, okay, we practice for this, we have our systems in place. Let's make sure and protect the public and we'll get through this. And everybody's like, okay.
We are
Right?
the firefighters of companies. I always joke, regulatory quality, we're the firefighters. When things they don't notice when things are going well, but then when things hit the fan, they turn to us. If you have like a recall or maybe you had some spoilage and you caught it before it got sent out, but you need to figure out what happened. And so people automatically will turn to the quality, the tech transfer people and say, what do we do? And so acting like firefighters are calm. They don't scream and run to the fire. They're methodical. Everybody has their place and you calmly do it, but you do it where you're not freaking out and you're not mean. You're like, this is good. We can do this. And that's definitely what quality and regulatory do. And food safety is be calm and it's gonna
Right.
be okay.
Right. We're the ones that prepare and we get ready for the things that we hope never happen, just like police and fire. So that's a really perfect example. So one of the things, and as we're preparing for this chat that I was thinking about, and I'll put the link to this book at the end of the chat because this is a really, really important book. The First 90 Days. That's kind of cool, the little letters in the background. Ooh, look at
Oh, I
that.
didn't know it has
And so the author here, Michael D. Watkins, you can get this on Amazon. I'll put the link in there. No affiliation with me, but this is a fantastic book because setting up, and this is not you saying, here's what I want to do in the 90 days. This is you sitting down with your boss and you're saying, all right, what does success look for? What are you looking for me to do in that first 90 days? And figuring out what are the quick wins that you can get? How can you help other departments? Extremely important. The rest of your career at that company is going to be based upon that first 90-day period.
That's totally true. I think that's really important. And so for me, being in a new technical role, being one of the first remote technical people in my company, it was very important for me to set a really good foundation with them. And for me, it's how can I help you?
Mhm.
And how can I, because for me, when you're coming into a new company, it's been so long since I've been in a new company. But for me, it's you're in a house. Like this is somebody's home in a way. Like people go home or come from their house and they go to work and they're there for 8 hours. It's a relationship in a home. You don't go in there and just start knocking things over, saying, this doesn't look good, I don't like this. It's more of a, probably there's been somebody that's missing, and so they're behind and they need help with things. And so you're like, where do you need me? How can I help you? And listen to people's pain points and see if there's something you can do to help that situation.
Yeah. I love that analogy. Yeah, you're a guest in their home. There's nothing worse than a new team member, and we've all experienced this. There's somebody new in the company, and they're being introduced to everybody or things like this. And after a while, they start saying things like, "Well, in my old company, we used to do it this way." I don't care. I don't care. Just because you did it that way before doesn't mean it's the right way. If you've got
Correct.
something new to contribute, fantastic. But to your point, Allie, and it bears repeating, is how can I help you? Here's some of the things that may be able to help you. What do you think?
Yeah.
And building those relationships, not going in and oh my, oh yeah, that's a really good way to cut yourself off from everybody really fast.
Yeah, and in the food quality, in the food safety world and regulatory, everything is nuanced. So
Mhm.
what might have worked in finished goods is not going to work in raw ingredients. And so you need to pay attention to what works and what doesn't work in that industry and where you're at. And so taking the time of just learning the workflows first and
Mhm.
seeing where you can, because I love optimization. That's my favorite thing. I love looking at something and saying, we could do this in a shorter amount of time and cut some fat out. But it's so good to listen to people. And so like there's things I know I asked for when I was in when I'm document management, and I'm asking for certain things. And I was sitting down with my manager and we were discussing, going over the list and the workflow of like what requests we want to have. And even him, he was like, why do we ask for this document? It's kind of bothered me that we've asked for this document. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute, I've always asked for this document, but I realized that if it's vegan, you don't need to ask for this document. If
Yeah.
it's not vegan, then you do need to ask for this document. And so it's kind of like what's so fun about being in new spots is it makes you take a step back and even question what you have done and think about, do we need this? Oh no, we didn't. So sitting down and talking really helps.
Yep. And yeah, George's making a good point here. What's the minimum that you actually need? Right. So part of what we always forget, thank you, Jordan, of what we always forget is just because it's there doesn't mean we have to do it. A lot
Correct.
of times in quality, if we can figure out ways to make things simpler and easier and more straightforward, that's value. That's value to an organization.
And it makes you more nimble. And that is perfect. I have a situation where we were sending out a huge list of document requirements, and they were maybe going to be secondary suppliers. We were not even sure they were going to go into production. And for
Mhm.
me, I'm like, we're overwhelming our suppliers. They are, if you keep asking for this, our response time is going to slow down. Why don't we pick key things that we definitely would need to cut a PO? And that makes us nimble. So then we turn it on and it's there. Our procurement team knows they can cut a PO and then give us the green light to collect the rest of the documents. And then instead of collecting 150 documents, you're collecting about 20. And so then it gives you room to do more things to help out your team on other things, like preparing for an audit.
Yep. That goes back to my saying is be easy to do business with. If you're a pain in the butt, right, after a while, people are going to start ignoring your emails. And a lot of times people think that the solution to that is to be more annoying. Well,
Yes.
no, that's just a spiral. Um, one of the things that I wanted to kind of jump back a little bit because your job search, Allie, was very successful and you had multiple offers from companies who wanted you to come work for them, which was
Yes.
awesome. So let's kind of walk through that strategy. What strategy did you put in place to help find yourself this awesome role?
Honestly, it was networking. I posted on LinkedIn that, we had an unfortunate layoff. I was very honest about what had happened. And then people were reaching out to me. Thank you, Jill, actually. I don't know if she's on the chat, but one of her networks saw her make a comment on my LinkedIn and had reached out to me and said, hey, we would really like you to apply to this position. And so I did apply to things that were, posted, but I got the email rejection right away. It was like, thank you for and you're competing against over like 100 applications.
Right. Yeah.
And so the ones that I got in for interviews were literally through networking, through you, through Jill, through my reputation from working from a previous supplier. And so those were the ones that I was able to get interviews with, because I'm sure my resume looked like everybody else that was applying. And it was very hard to differentiate myself from everybody else. And it was my reputation and networking that helped me through that process. And I'm incredibly thankful that people put their name out for me. Very honored, to be honest. And yeah, and that's what helped me. It was incredibly stressful, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how people jump from job to job. I am don't it's not my cup of tea. If I'm happy, I don't want to leave. So yeah, that was definitely the journey. It was like networking, helping out also my other team members that were part of the layoff. I think that also was very key, because I don't know, it helped me being in contact with them. It's kind of like an emotional support group as well. So you're talking to people who are going through the same pains as you, and it just is like, okay, I'm not alone. So I think like networking, having a good reputation, keep in contact with other key members that might have, if you are part of a layoff, keep in contact with them, share ideas with them. I think that's another wonderful thing is several of us realized in the process that if a company really, really likes you and they say in person only, on site only applications, if they really like you, they will change it and make it remote or make it hybrid. And that has been the case. So don't lose hope if you see it's on site only. Apply.
Yep.
And if the worst comes, you get a no thank you. That's the worst that can happen. Otherwise, they can think you're interesting and then they meet with you. And that happened in two of the instances that I got offers for, where they did that they were on site or hybrid. And because of us having great chemistry when they met with me, they're like, we can make this remote for you. And so don't lose hope on that.
A ton of information there. So let me kind of go back through this for everyone. Is number one, never forget, especially on LinkedIn, right? It's so easy to apply now. And you can envision in your head people who are out there looking for roles just hitting the instant apply button, and hundreds of people flooding these companies with resumes which have absolutely no experience with the role. Companies have a defense against this, right? There's that first level filter. They're using AI, they're using keyword search. The computers are talking, right? So a computer is applying to a computer, right? And there's no human interaction. So it's not personal, right? They're trying to weed through that information. A good way to think of it is like buying a car. So when you're first thinking about buying a car, it's a very cold, impersonal process. And you're like, okay, I want a car that does this, and it's got this gas mileage, and it's got all-wheel drive, and you have a list of things that you're looking for in the car. Just like when you're applying for a job, they have they have a job description, you have a resume, you're trying to match those two things up. As that relationship grows, it then moves into a more emotional realm, in that if you're a good fit for that role and that company likes you, they're going to start kind of fudging some stuff. It's like, well, gosh, Allie would be an amazing member of our team. Number one, she's super awesome. She's easy to talk to. She has a good personality. She knows her stuff. I know we posted this as a on-site position, but to get Allie on board, I think remote would work just fine. The position will start to morph at that point in time if they want you. And that's a good place to be in at that point in time. But in order to get to that warm process where they know you and trust you, you have to get through those initial barriers and hurdles. So it's a numbers game at that point. Don't let that get you down.
Yeah, it definitely is. I applied to a lot of places. And yes, I did get offers, but I did apply to a lot and got a lot of thank you for your application emails, which hurts. It's like dating in a way. It's like you get rejected. You're in the speed dating realm and you're applying, and then, it seems like such a cool role. And then you get the rejection that's like, thanks, but no thanks. And you're like, oh, darn, like, what did I need to do to be better? Like, what was it? And so you do question yourself, like, what
Mhm.
should I
Yeah.
have done?
Well, and for liability reasons, companies can't necessarily even tell you why, right? Because they don't want to get sued, right? And these
Yeah.
types of things. Another good point around the search too that people overlook, and over my career, I've developed relationships with about 3 really good recruiters that I trust. And if I find someone who is looking for a role that I can help out, I'll refer them to those recruiters in those fields. And these are recruiters that specialize in particular areas. There's one in Idaho I use for dairy beverage type roles. She knows people and she has a ton of contacts, and I trust her. We all get these random interactions on LinkedIn where recruiters will reach out, or yeah, they're just throwing stuff against the wall to see if they can find something. And a lot
Hmm.
of times too on LinkedIn too, we're seeing scams with recruiters too. So you have to be very careful with that.
Very
Again,
mindful.
like everything in life, those relationships that you build are super important. And finding recruiters that you trust and you can build relationships works both ways. They can help you find jobs. And if you're in a role where you need to hire somebody, those are the people that I go to as well.
Yes.
So as we kind of talked about here, so the next thing here is, okay, you're in your new role, and there's that acclimation period. You're going through the orientation, understanding a little bit about the company, trying to figure things out. Um, so you'd already mentioned this early, but I kind of wanted to talk here too, Allie, about you're starting your first role, and right? You're excited, you're nervous, you want to do a good job, and really, it's that kind of that initial process. So, what are some of those important mindsets that you had to starting in your first role? And you kind of mentioned that you're there to help, so I think
Yes.
it's super important. So I want to reemphasize that.
Yeah, also being mindful of that, don't get down if you don't understand their platform systems. That has been a learning curve for me. Certain things that I hadn't utilized since I that I was a little older in tech, in my opinion, but I didn't know, and I was honest about it. I was like, oh wow, this is, but I accept challenge accepted. So I think like if you're not good at something, because you when you're in a company for so long, you become so good at whatever you're doing. Like say you're on Google and you do all of that and you're fantastic. You can find anything in a drive, you can find any folder. And so you're super, super good at that. And then when you come into a new company and they have a different system, and you wouldn't think that that would be like a problem with like checking emails, but again, when you're connecting and talking to people who have also been part of a layoff and they're starting, and they're like, oh yeah, I am struggling on this, and just being aware that you're going to struggle, but it's okay. Take it like I took it as a challenge accepted. I'm going to be really, really good at this one, but it is a little ding on your pride when you're like, I don't know how to open an email. And I feel like I'm my grandmother right now, where she's saying, honey, how do I open up this app? I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, what's this face page thing? Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
as you get older in your career, you go through these iterations of different platforms and different technologies,
yeah.
and you have to keep current. And so again, back to the talent stacks thing, is you have to look at this as an opportunity of, oh, cool, I get to learn something new. Awesome.
Yes, you have to, because I mean, my mindset is always keep learning. Everything that's what I think what makes, regulatory and quality so exciting is that you have so many changes all the time. You have, I mean, like SQF is coming out with their new edition. Like, I'm really excited. 10, it's coming out. What is going to happen in our world? Like, how is this going to look? Are they going to be more interested in, because you have now in today's world, you have so many complications in terms of like document management. Just keep going back to that one since that's my specialty. But you ask for all these documents, and then you need to make sure that these documents are up to date. You don't want to be having something from 2020. You want to make sure that you're within, depending on the type of doc, that it's within the last 3 to 2 years. 1 year if you're doing certifications like your organic and your kosher and your halal. And how do you manage that? And so the way it used to be is keeping in the drive. And it's like, well, that's not working. And I think auditors also are aware when they're looking on the floor, like how are you managing your 1,500 ingredients? And I feel like there's going to be a call out on document management heavier to just emphasize it. But that's like the exciting part of like the world, is that things are ever evolving, and you need to always, no matter what, keep in the mindset of being happy to learn new things.
Yeah, it's like Cortland is saying here. I mean, you have to be a learner and understand that as one of your strengths, and that has to be lifelong. And if you're not learning and growing, you're degrading and decomposing.
Yes.
There's no in between. And you can look at stuff now. Imagine this in your company. If you're able, to your point, Allie, this massive database this is a huge challenge in companies, right? You have all these suppliers, and for every one of those suppliers, you need 10, 15 documents, and they keep adding new suppliers, right? You never get rid of suppliers, you just keep adding, adding, adding. Now imagine if you're able to look at this type of technology and say, I wonder if there's a way I can use AI to help me screen and look for abnormalities in this paperwork so I can follow up and save me some time.
Correct. Makes a
Hmm.
call out, because there are some suppliers that leave that you can go on their platform and they have the documents, which is so lovely. But even they make mistakes, and you have to do your due diligence because they'll upload the wrong, allergen report. And you're like, wait a minute, this does not go in par with what I had in previous documents. So now I need to go back and review. And there's 20 documents sometimes that you're reviewing. So if you could have like this whole fast, efficient way that can make call outs for you. Yeah, I'm excited to see what AI is going to do.
Yeah, I'm using Grok more and more. Now imagine if someone, like the whole Terraflower thing happened.
Mhm.
If someone had done a query and said, instead of just saying, "Oh, it's a superfood," right, without looking at it, if someone had done the due diligence and looked at that and said, "Hey, hold on, time out, we got a problem here," right?
Yeah.
Could have saved a whole lot of pain and grief for sure. Um,
They did miss a partial step. They didn't. I know, I'm thinking of one company that did not ask for a grass statement. And it's like, that's the first thing is, if you hear, if you have your sales team or somebody comes in and they say, hey, there's this new superfood that's super popular right now, everybody's doing it, or we'll be the first to do it. It's coming out of South America has like all the superfoods. So it's coming out of South America. Let's be the first ones to get on it. And then they don't ask for your basic documentation of like, hey, grass. What is this even approved? And I'm not entirely sure if grass would have helped with the situation for one of those companies, because
mhm,
it was proven inconclusive on like the liver damage that it was doing in both Canada and the United States. But at least you had like done like the baseline. And
right.
so yeah, I think AI is going to be able to like help, like, what are my risk managements for this ingredient? And it can like help pull in like, well, data has shown that this hasn't been utilized in food yet. What do we need for
Mhm.
this? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and this goes back to our theme here for today around this new role. So again, I love your phrasing around this. I'm here to help, right? I'm the newbie. I don't know anything. I'm here to understand how you do things and to help. Now
Hmm.
imagine you're going through this process and now you're looking and using AI and these other tools to figure out ways to help. And you start looking at all these tariffs and saying, "Oh wow, this stuff is changing every day," right? There was a tweet this morning saying that it looks like there's going to be a bunch of tariffs in June next week on Europe, 50%. Wow. Just sitting back and thinking about that from an R&D regulatory standpoint and saying, okay, well, do we get ingredients from Europe? You know, hey, procurement guys, is there anything I can do to help on this? We may need to find some quick resourcing of other areas. I have some resources in the supply side that we could potentially look for a different source here. I've already done a lot of the legwork around this and I know the company. Would you like to see that?
Yeah. I
And,
think that.
and doing that in that tone, sorry, Allie, doing that in that tone of not, here's how I did it in my last company,
Mm-mm.
of, hey, I can help in this area. Would you like some help?
Yes, it's always, if you are going to bring up examples of your previous companies, which everybody will because that's where our experience comes from, you definitely have to use the language of, I used to do a process this way. What do you think about this process? Do you think this will work for us? Because they know, while you're learning in your first 90 days, there's no way you can learn the ins and the outs and the nuances of the company If it's a big company or a small company, there even that can have differences. And so you always, if you are going to bring that up of like your past experience with something, you do need to say, how do we feel about that? What do we think? Will this work? And if you do that, people are like, oh yeah, let me think about that. And then they can come back and they can say, you know what? This won't work for us. And you also are in the mindset of that's okay that you didn't like that idea, because I say this to my kids all the time when I'm like, yes or no. And if they get angry at me that I said no, I was like, so were you asking me or were you demanding? Because there's this which one was this that you were pretending this was a question, but you were really demanding that? It's also, and be okay with if they don't think that's a good idea when you're coming on board, because the best for me, the best idea in the room wins. It doesn't need to be mine. It could be somebody else. And let's move forward because that's for the betterment of the company. And being passionate about, what we do is because we're producing food for people that's like safe on the other side for them.
Right. And so back to the first 90 days piece of it, right? Is so you're gathering information, you're understanding, and then you're sitting down with your boss and saying, here's the game plan I'd like to put together for success in this role for the first 90 days. Do you see this as a good path forward, or am I missing something? And getting agreement with your boss, right?
Yes.
Because that's the person who's going to be deciding whether or not you're a good fit. And that first 90 days is critical. And
That is
figuring out those quick wins.
Yeah, that's a really important part, because going back to when you go to people and you say, how can I help you? I met with a lot of teams, and I listened to their pain points and everything and their ideas for me. And so instead of rejecting, saying that's not my job, which that's a terrible thing to say, but because you do need to check in with your manager before you make promises, a very good thing to say is, that sounds like a very good idea. Let me talk to my manager and let's see if this is a good fit for me for this specific project. So you're not saying that's not my job, but you also don't want to make promises that you haven't checked in with your VP or your manager about, because they also have their goals and their pain points. And you want to make sure that you're being mindful of that as well.
Yep. That's not my job is career suicide, right? It's like, you want to ruin your career. That's the phrase to do it right there.
Yeah.
And that was another really good point that you brought up, which is your job is to make your boss's job easier.
Yes, 100%. To make and a lot of times when you're coming in a new position, you're probably removing responsibilities from their role and allowing them. And I talked to my own manager about this. I say, hey, these are your pain points, and like I think I can help with these things, and that allows you to also build on what makes like your growth as well, because if they're growing, you're also growing. So it's like this really important symbiotic relationship, in my opinion, that if your manager, your VP, they are your mentors, but if you allow your mentor to also grow, it's going to grow you at the same time if you have healthy relationships. And so yeah, we do this together, and it's amazing and it's exciting. And when you get to have your manager go to like a conference that they've been wanting to go to for a very long time and never had the capability to go to me, that is just as rewarding as me being able to go to a conference, because our managers, our VPs, they're also humans. They also have dreams and wanting and aspirations. And if you can help that, you're creating this really wholesome environment of growth for everybody. And it transcends, because I do believe top to bottom in a lot of things. And so if you have a healthy, happy manager, you're going to have usually a healthy, happy like team members at the bottom, and all the way down to even your receivings guys. So that's really important.
Yep. Now, here's a hard truth that people don't like to hear. They like to blame their boss for this, but the odds are it's actually them. If you're being micromanaged, it means your boss doesn't trust you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ouch.
And it could be that the reason why is because their boss is not trusting, and it's trickling down. So there's this It's complex for sure, but I do think that even if you have, say, a manager that is micromanaging, passive aggressive, all of those things, I think if you stay true to yourself and you continue doing hard work, everybody sees it at the end of the day and then they
Yeah.
know. But if you try to punish or say, well, if you're going to do this to me, I'm going to do that, a tit for tat, you're creating again this toxic environment that's just going to spill over. And so always, regardless of your managers, always stay true to yourself. Don't deviate from your path because somebody else is.
Hmm. So a hallmark of a successful department head is they let their teams do what they're supposed to do. And they also then push down as much stuff as possible. Oh, well, you're just being a lazy boss. No, I'm teaching them how to do these things so they can make their next career move. And it frees time up for me as a department head to work with the other department heads to, guess what, help run the company. Right?
Exactly.
If I'm sucked down into conference calls trying to figure out why a particular supplier didn't have a good food safety plan, that's not what I'm doing. I should be doing. That's
Yeah.
what that person should be doing. If there's a problem they can't resolve, then of course that's why I'm there. I'm there to resolve problems and to
Mm-hmm.
help run the company. But if you can't do that role and you can't manage it yourself, why do I need you?
Exactly. I keep those moments for like secret weapons. I call them my secret weapons. If I'm having an issue, I will alert my manager or my VP and say, hey, this is going on. I've got it handled. No problem. So they're not blindsided. And then in case of extreme cases, I'll be like, hey, I would like to pull you in because this person's being a pickle, or this company's being a pickle, and we need to use a little bit of a heavier weight in this situation. But that's also important because you're showing your manager and your VP, your CEO, that you can also tell when you need to bring in the baked goods, because sometimes that has to happen. And so if you have this healthy relationship with your manager, that they trust you because you are communicating to them, and then elevating when it needs to get elevated, they know. They're like, oh, I haven't heard about this, I think we're good. Like they can trust that I'm
Mhm.
taking care of this.
Yep, absolutely. So, Bushra, good to see you. So, she has a question here for us, Allie, which is a hard one. As a
Okay.
new team member, how do you go about influencing others when you believe a change in a specific process could improve efficiency and outcome? So, in other words, if I interpret this wrong, Bushra, let me know, is that you come into a new company and you see something that's obviously wrong and needs to be fixed. I can tell you what not to do is to be a bull in a china shop and say, we're going to change all this and this needs to change now and this is a bunch of crap. You're
Yeah,
going to get massive pushback if you do that.
you're going to get massive pushback, and there's got to be two decision pathways. One is just a food safety issue that you need to like call red alert, or is this just an optimization process plan? Is there something going wrong that you're like, we could do this better? Those kind of diverge you. If you're like, because all of us, food safety is our number one. And so if you see something that could put, food in, put food out that could cause a recall, red flags all around for me. I will do whatever I can to do the red alert. But if it is about a processing, one thing you have to be comfortable with is they might say no. And
Mhm.
how do you manage that? And I am in that process right now where I see that there is a white space where we could have a better workflow. I have presented the evidence. I said, I have experience. I can guide you through this. This will work out. I pull in team members that are affected by it, and then getting them excited about it, and then bringing it to, because it's all about finances, and then presenting and saying like, this will save us money in the
Mhm.
long run if we do this. If not, that's fine. I will make this work. And I think that is very key, is that you need to have an ABC. At least for me, I'm always having an ABCD plan. But if they say no, you still need to show that you can make this work. You might not agree with it, but I think, pulling in your key stakeholders definitely helps. Like, who else would benefit? And then also adding in like, hey, like my operations, they needed something. I'm like, if this is available for this, my operations can pull up their SDSs in no time if they're on the manufacturing floor. So like
Yep.
technically people would not make that connection that maybe this would also work for operations. But I thought
Mhm.
about it and listened when I met them in person. I listened to their pain points and I was like, wait a minute, I see another opportunity for this new workflow that I would like to implement. And so now
Mhm.
I don't just have R&D interested, I have quality interested, I have operations in it and regulatory. And so then now they're all wanting it and it just makes it more viable for, the company to want to spend that money.
Right. So some really good points in there is talk in terms that everybody else in the organization understands. What's the return on investment? How much time does this save us? What's our money involved with this? How much time are we wasting? Another
Mhm.
good point you made in there is, let's say, for example, you have a real crappy document system and nobody likes it. Everybody hates it. And quality has been charged with trying to find a replacement. This is number one, to your point. This is not a food safety issue necessarily. Let's say it's not a food safety issue. So, okay, this is a process system that works really clunky and we don't like it. You don't have to fix it immediately, right? This is something you can build into your objectives. And to your point, start talking with all these other groups and saying, okay, R&D, how do you manage your documents? Oh God, it's terrible. We do all these things and we can't find anything. And okay. Procurement, how do you deal with your documents? Oh, we got a paper file over here. That's how we deal with our documents. And you start gathering this information, and then you start building your case. And if it's food safety, absolutely, there's some things that need to be escalated right away. And if you
Mhm.
don't, that's worse, right? If Allie, if you find a food safety issue, you need to let the head of quality or food safety know today, right? It's like, hey, boss, found a problem.
Mhm.
And part of this is building out that vision. It's like, okay, where does this company going, and how can I help get them there? And I may know a potential path forward based upon pain points, to your point, Allie, that we had in the past. So how can we help build something that's better in the future?
Mhm.
So you mentioned this earlier, but I want to reemphasize this as well. There's certain things that can kill you in a new role. Those certain things that are absolute. It's the third rail, man. If you do these things, it's kind of like that analogy. I always like this, and Dustin and I were talking about this on a past chat. Is there's two types of people in the world. There's people who light up a room when they enter it, and there's people who light up a room when they leave it. Don't be the second one. Don't be the second one. It's just like,
No.
oh my God, Brian came in and everything is doom and gloom and he's such a wet blanket. Oh my God, I hate talking with that guy. You're done. You're done. Everybody's going to walk the other way when they see you. They're not going to go to lunch with you. They don't want to socialize with you at the conferences.
Mm-mm.
You're just right.
Yes.
And you'd mentioned earlier, right? Well, this is how we did it in our company before, right? Who cares? The other one, which is absolute, I would watch for this with my teams really, really closely. If I saw this, we're going to have a conversation around this. It's not my job, right? It's not in my job description. I can put it there easy enough,
Yeah.
right?
Let me put it in your job description. I'll email it to you today. No
Right.
problem.
That can be taken care of. That's why in job descriptions, I always put a phrase in there, and other duties as assigned.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of my job
Learning to
descriptions always
roll up
had
your
that.
sleeves is another one I've seen. Is because yeah, there's certain things, and because of the nuances in the food world, maybe we did that wasn't something that we needed to do, and but now with whatever FDA regulations we changed. Oh, coconut, for instance, coconut oil was removed. It's no longer an allergen
Right.
from nuts, and so those things happen. And so how do you need to be adjustable for those and saying not your job, and it's like, well, whose job is it, because this is a new situation, so it's on nobody's job
Right.
description.
Yep.
So
Your job is to protect the company, the consumers, and make money. That's your job. That's
correct,
everybody's job.
everybody's job.
So, so you had a job search, you landed this new awesome amazing role, you're super happy. They brought you on and they kind of changed it around for you to be remote. What
Hmm.
are some of the things that you've learned here, Allie, with being remote that you need to watch out for? So if you're in a remote role, what do people need to be looking at?
Okay, so definitely I highly recommend you go in person and meet with your team. This was my first job where I went 100% remote right off the bat and not meet with the team physically. So that was something I had realized about 2 weeks in. I was like, oh, I need to be in person for the week. I want to just get the feel of people because sometimes there are nuances with people that might come off brisk and because you don't know them. And then what's so lovely is you get to meet them and you're like, oh no, you're not brisk. You just are really busy. So, and you can see how they work and how they flow. And then you have that interpersonal time with the person. So
Yeah.
I definitely think even if you're a remote, take the time, even if it's out of pocket. I highly recommend it because you just get to work with it. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing is that I realized that something I had taken for granted was in my previous company, everybody had their camera because you can see their faces. But with a company that doesn't have a lot of online meetings, the cameras were off. And so
Uh,
I had told the team, I was like, hey, these are my higher ups. Please have your cameras on. I would like to see your faces. And so now we're in meetings and they turn their cameras on. And so those are like little weird things that I didn't think about when you are going full remote and maybe that
uh-huh.
company hasn't been fully remote themselves. Um, Working on digitalizing things instead of printing it out and like how you can work through that flow. So
Yeah.
those are definitely things I did not think about going in that I realized once I was in what are some pain points.
Yeah. This is not reality,
Yeah.
right? This is a convenient technology to help people talk over distance. To your
Hmm.
point, when you go and meet with people in person, that person who's brusque or appears stressed or things like this, why? You don't know why. Let's say,
Hmm.
for example, that person has a sick mother that they're
Yeah.
taking care of, and they're going through a really hard time. You don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know. And the only way you can understand those things is in person. When we first had our first meetings in person together, the comment I got from everybody is, "You're big."
No,
Right?
no, no. The one that got me was when you said you were an introvert. And I was like, Brian, you were not an introvert. I do not believe that in one shape or form because of how personal you are in these meetings in one to one. Like, I was like, I don't believe it. Then when we met in person, I was like, oh no, Brian is an introvert. He likes the smaller group settings, but like massive. And that was a very fun thing to learn about you and definitely teased you about
Sure.
because I'm not going in the crow's nest. I want to be down here with all the people, but that was your need. And so that was not something you can get with the online. So
Yeah.
meeting in
Now,
person
yeah.
is important.
Yeah. So imagine if you just decided that, okay, Brian's an introvert and I'm just going to run roughshod over that. I'm gonna make him be extroverted with me. No, you're
No,
not. No, you're not.
no. That's terrible. That's so mean. Like, what is the purpose of that? Are you just like, you're not helping the person if you're forcing something on somebody who doesn't want it. So
Yeah.
you're just making them uncomfortable at that point in time.
Yep. Exactly. Um, so we talked about solutions. So kind of as we're summarizing this now, Allie, we've covered just a ton of material here. And what's great about our talk today, and thank you for doing this, right, is this applies to everybody. This applies to every role in every company. It applies to, consultants and advisors like me as well. I
Hmm.
just can't come into companies and be like, well, here's how you need to do things, right? And you see this a lot in auditing, where auditors will come in and try to run roughshod over a company and make them change all their documentation because that's how the auditor wants it.
Hmm.
No, right? That's a bad auditor if they do that.
Yeah.
It's the same in any other field as well. So, kind of, what are your thoughts here around closing today?
My thoughts are keep learning, be kind and respectful to people, be mindful of how you approach people. I think when you're online, I think sometimes people can forget that they're talking to another person, and so you need to remind them, like turning the camera on. If I have my camera on, probably you should have your camera on because I'm engaging with you, and I want to make sure that you are engaging with me and not just on
Yeah,
your
yeah,
computer
doing something else.
and then going, uh-huh, yep, sure, Okay.
All right,
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Be in the moment, right?
Please be in the moment when you're with
And
people.
you're showing respect. You're saying what you're telling me is important. I have value in that. You have my focus. Right?
Yes.
People
And
that
also
do that
your
are very powerful.
oh, sorry. Also your reputation. Don't let people anybody tell you that it's okay if you do this. We'll give you more money if you stay with us. And you're like, no, 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 no. If my reputation is to be safeguarded, and if somebody is asking you to do something that's against your reputation, against your morals, definitely is a red flag for you. So safeguard your reputation. Make sure that you come to people with the mindset that there's probably something going on. And if they're acting a little off, don't take it personal. Just maybe it was a bad day. Maybe they were like me and got a flat tire on the way to school for my kids and had to spend $1,000 on some new tires.
Yeah. And if you just take the moment to notice that and say, gosh, Allie, you okay? You having a bad day? Oh, right. And just letting that person decompress from that, right?
Yeah,
And realizing that they're a person just like you are. And Cortland makes a good comment here is that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, right? You're being stagnant.
correct.
If you're in that position, that's a really, really bad place to be because then things are going to start going downhill and it's going to happen really slowly and you're not going to notice it. And then one day it's going to be too hard to dig out of that hole.
Yeah,
Thanks, Cortland. That's a really good comment.
be comfortable with not necessarily being the expert in that, field at that point in time. Sometimes you're not going to be that person. Sometimes you and I love that's what I love on your chats. I love to listen to everybody that Austin, Jill, Tia, Tim, like Bill Marler, like all those amazing people that I genuinely look up to and get so excited to hear their knowledge because it's impossible to know everything about food safety. Like
Yeah.
that's silly. So there's going to be so many things you don't know and being excited to learn from people is part of like the beautiful thing about these food safety chats is the sharing
Yeah.
of knowledge.
Yep. Everybody's talent stack is different. Everybody has their own unique set of skills. And if you can find talents that other people have that you can add to your stack, and vice versa, you can help them, right? Win-win.
Exactly.
Yep. And Cortland's absolutely right here. Ethics are non-negotiable. It's just like food safety. It's not negotiable, right? It's either it's good or it's bad.
Mhm.
Ethics, there's no compromise on that. And in order to do that, you have to understand that. You have to understand what your ethics are for this, because if you don't, you run the risk of being influenced in ways that you don't want. So
Correct.
philosophy in life, right? So in my book, I have a whole section. It's rather contrarian to what you normally see in management books. I have a whole section in there on philosophy and why it's important. Philosophy is those three main questions that we're all asking all the time. What is it? How do I know? And what do I do about it? You have to be
Mhm.
constantly thinking of those things in those terms. And ethics runs through everything.
Correct. I agree with that completely.
Yep. So to close out, here's my final thought around this is you cannot be an advocate for food safety if you're not valued and respected in your organization. Period. If
Correct.
nobody listens to you, it doesn't matter what you say.
No, they won't. So when you go in and you have that open door policy where they can come to you and talk to you and work things through, that trust of being heard is so important. And if it's your manager trusts you that they can come and talk to you, if it's, somebody from receivings that can come to you and talk to you, like that building that trust, having that I can help you, and if I can't help you, I know the resources to help you is so key to any position if you are mid-level, bottom level, top level, and down.
Yep. Absolutely. And as promised here, here's the link to the book that I mentioned. Again, it's called First 90 Days by Michael D. Watkins. It's been around for a while. They have a updated, revised copy out there. Sitting down and putting in a plan. You can't get anywhere if you don't have a map to get there. So you got to put together that map and show the organization how you can help. So with that, thanks, Allie. Awesome chat. And I agree with Anna. This was a fantastic chat, a great way to start.
It went by so fast.
Isn't it crazy? That's one of the things that the guests always say is it's absolutely amazing. It's like, what? Our time's up. Yep, time's up. So with that, we're going to close out our chat here for this week. Thank you, everybody, for the amazing comments. Lots of wisdom here in the chat for sure. Thanks, everybody. Of course, we'll be back here next week at the same time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for the next food safety chat. We'll have another amazing guest like Allie on the chat. And we'll have a great conversation with our guest and, of course, with you. In the meantime, enjoy this weekend. Have some nice coffee. Enjoy the nice weather. And we'll do it all again next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Bye.